Textured hands demo video. So the first step in doing your textured hands is that you're going to get 2 pieces of rough draft paper or 2 pages in your sketchbook, and lightly with a pencil you're going to trace your left and your right hand because they're actually displayed together on the wall like handprints. So we want a left and a right. So I'm going to start by tracing. You want your hand a little bit lower so you've got more room to turn your fingers into something else. And you want to space them out. And you're just doing a light outline because you could very well end up erasing your finger and turning it into something else. Now for the second hand, the easiest way to do this one, because it's hard sometimes to trace with your non-dominant hand. You end up with one hand that looks like a skeleton. So the easiest way to do your left hand is to actually take your right hand and flip it over this way, palm up, and lightly trace it so that you have the two with the thumbs facing towards each other. Now, you have several design options when you're developing your ideas. Design choice is important in this project. So you can transform your fingers into something else. You could depict things growing out of your fingers or things inserted into the fingers. So let's look at some examples here, right? But you want to pick objects that have texture in real life. Dolphins do not make good texture. Penguins do not make good texture. Certain animals, depending on the feathers or the fur, don't have enough visual texture, right? Now this works okay. Sometimes the solution is not showing the entire animal, but just part of the animal, like the llama head. By zooming in closer, we can show that texture of the fur better, or the bumps on the seahorse better, or the eyelashes and the tufts of fur in the giraffe head. Here's a good example of scribble to create that foliage. And you can use the scribble or your technique to shade the object so that it looks 3D on the paper as well. A lot of these ideas use multiple techniques to get that realism. Here's an example of contour lines with the little warts growing out of the finger, or the texture on his tongue and stippling. Your design ideas can be completely random, right? Most of mine were chosen just because I was trying to get an example of all 7 techniques in my hand. You do not have to have all 7 pen and ink techniques depicted. You use what's appropriate for what you're drawing. I would never use scribble to do a feather. It would look like a Swiffer duster, not like an actual feather. But they can be animals, they could be people, they could be objects, right? Like the helmet or the architecture here. This finger was supposed to look like the screen on a window with the cross-hatching. If you use cross-hatching to shade a finger, or you use contour line to shade a finger, you always want to curve those lines so that your fingers look 3D as well as textured. Out of these 5, the goose head is probably the least textured of all of them. That was not a very strong design idea on my part. As soon as I got finished with it, I was like, that's pretty smooth. I'd have been better off doing like a peacock or a cockatoo that have like feathers or plumage on the top. So you've really got to brainstorm and think about and look up pictures of your ideas. Do not rely on memory. I found pictures for everything in here. The lemon, the crab claw, even the texture in the scarf. Here's some additional ideas, right? Examples of how you can use multiples, right? So we've got scribble and we've got the contour lines in the ram's head and parallel lines and stippling. Now this one, kind of the same thing as the goose head. It's very 3D on the fork and the spaghetti, but they're very smooth objects. Spaghetti is smooth. The silverware is smooth. I'd have been better off putting a meatball on it. That was kind of my original idea, but after I did the burnt marshmallow, I figured the meatball would look too similar. So I really should have come up with another design idea for that one. That one's not a very strong design. So the first class, 2 classes working on your rough draft, is brainstorming. Think about how I can zoom in and depict part of it, or pick an individual. Instead of a field of flowers, you're doing a single flower. Things like that. Try to have visual variety. So for the first 2 class periods, you're working on this in pencil and trying it out in pencil on your practice paper first.